The Home Rule Movement, Political Science. Home Rule Movement, 1916 to 1980. Aggressive constitutionalism and the nationalist preparation for mass politics. The Home Rule Movement, 1916 to 1918, was a pivotal, if short lived, campaign in the history of Indian nationalism. From a political science perspective, it represents a unique synthesis of moderate and extremist strategies, a nationwide, politically sophisticated agitation that was both constitutional in its methods and radical in its objective of self government. It served as a crucial bridge between the era of elite petitioning and the forthcoming era of mass Gandhian non cooperation, effectively preparing the ideological and organizational ground for the final assault on the British Raj. The genesis, the political vacuum, and the wartime imperative. The movement emerged from a specific confluence of political and international factors that created a strategic opportunity for Indian nationalists. The political context, the dormancy of the Congress. Following the Surat split of 1907, the Indian National Congress was weakened and dominated by moderates who were largely inactive. The extremists led by Tilak were excluded from the party. This created a political vacuum with no all India organization agitating aggressively for self rule. The impact of World War I, the war 1914 to 1918, was a catalytic event. Increased exploitation. The war led to increased taxes, inflation, and misery for ordinary Indians, fueling anti British sentiments. The hypocrisy of fighting for freedom. The British rhetoric of fighting to protect the freedom of small European nations like Belgium was brilliantly turned against them by Indian leaders. They asked why India, which was contributing massively to the war effort with man and money, was itself denied freedom. Britain's vulnerability. The war preoccupied Britain and exposed its vulnerabilities, creating a perceived window of opportunity for pressing Indian demands. The leadership, a strategic alliance of contrasts. The movement was led by two formidable figures who represented different strands of nationalism yet found common cause. Balangadar Tilak, uh, base Maharashtra and central provinces strategy. After this release from Mandale prison in 1914, Tilak sought a way to re enter mainstream politics. He realized that a direct confrontational approach like the Swadeshi movement was not feasible during the war. Home rule offered a platform that was radical in its goal but constitutional in its methods, allowing him to rehabilitate his image and mobilize his vast Maharashtrian base. Slogan Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. He now channeled his demand through the constitutional framework of Home Rule. Annie Besant, base Madras Presidency and parts of Hindi heartland. Strategy. An Irish theosophist, Besant was inspired by the Irish Home Rule movement. She argued that the movement of Britain's difficulty was India's opportunity. Her approach was to use extensive propaganda to educate and mobilize public opinion, creating a groundswell of support that the British would be able to ignore. Famous declaration England's need is India's opportunity. Source integration. The political context of the war and the rise of movement is detailed in Bipin Chandra's Indian struggle for independence. Tilak's strategy is analyzed in Richard Cashman's The Myth of the Lokmanya. Tilak and mass politics in Maharashtra. Annie Besant's role and ideology are explored in Annie Taylor's Annie Besant, a biography. The ideology and political strategy of the movement. The Home Rule movement was distinguished by its clear objective, its sophisticated methods, and its broad based appeal. The objective self government within the British Empire. The demand was for Home Rule, a status equivalent to that of Canada or Australia, that is Dominion status. These were less radical than complete independence but more concrete than advanced than the vague self government demanded by moderates. Political significance. It was a politically astute demand. It was difficult for the British to reject outright, as it was framed within the constitutional traditions of the empire itself. It united moderates, extremists, and a wide section of the public under a clear and achievable banner. The methods, propaganda, and political mobilization. The movement's genius lay in its extensive use of propaganda and its ability to create a structured yet decentralized agitation. Extensive propaganda machine. Newspapers and pamphlets. Tilak used his Marathi newspaper Kesari and his English paper the Maharatha. Annie Besant founded the newspaper New India and the Commonweal, which became powerful organs of the movement, articulating its demand with great clarity and force. Public lectures and tours, both leaders, along with their associates like Joseph Baptista and George Arundel, embarked on extensive nationwide tours, not ours, holding hundreds of public meetings to explain the concept of home rule and recruit members. Political education. The movement focused on educating the public about the meaning of self government, the shortcomings of the existing system, and the principles of democracy. Organizational structure. Second, Tilak established the Indian Home Rule League in April 1916 in Pune. Besant established the Home Rule League in September 1916 in Madras. To avoid friction, they informally divided their zones of operation. This centralized structure allowed for flexibility and rapid growth. Broad social base. The movement successfully attracted students, lawyers, professionals, and the urban middle class. It also made significant inroads into smaller towns and a district, reaching a wider audience than previous Congress led agitations. The strategic positioning. The movement maintained a position of responsive cooperation. It supported the British war effort while simultaneously demanding political payment for that support. This prevented the government from easily branding it as seditious during wartime. Source integration. The ideological content of Besant's New India is a primary source that can be directly analyzed. The organizational strategy are covered in S.R. Mehrotra's India and Commonwealth, 1885 to 1929. Third, the government response and the movement radicalization. The British government initially estimated the movement but soon moved to suppress it. A reaction that ultimately strengthened the nationalist cause. Repression. The Madras government, in particular, took a hard line in June 1917. It imposed restrictions on the movement's leaders and interned Annie Besant on her associates and her associates. The backfire effect. This repression proved to be a catastrophic miscalculation. Besant's internation transformed her into a national martyr and caused a firestorm of protest. It led to a massive surge in membership of the Home Rule Leagues. It forced even moderate leaders within the Congress to rally behind Besant, leading to her election as the president of the Calcutta session of the Congress in 1917, a supreme irony where the organization she was critiquing for its inactivity now crowned her its leader. Impact, achievement, and legacy. The unfulfilled triumph. Okay. Though the movement declined after 1918, its impact on the trajectory of Indian nationalism was profound and multifaceted. The immediate achievement, the Montagu Declaration. The most direct and significant achievement of the movement was forcing the British government, and the sustained All India agitation created a political crisis that demanded a response. On August 20, 1917, Secretary of State Edwin Montagu made the historic announcement in the British Parliament. The policy of His Majesty's government is that of the increasing association of India in every branch of the administration and the gradual development of self-governing institutions with a view to the progressive realization of the responsible government in India as an integral part of the British Empire. This was the first unequivocal British commitment to self-government for India. A Home Rule movement was primary catalyst for this declaration. The political and organizational legacy. Preparation for Gandhi. The movement created a nationwide network of politically conscious citizens and a generation of youth who were trained in the methods of peaceful political agitation. This infrastructure and this educated public were the very assets that Mahatma Gandhi would later mobilize for his non cooperation and civil disobedience movements. Unification of the Congress. The movement created the atmosphere that made the reunion of the moderates and extremists at the 1916 Lucknow session possible. The common platform of Home Rule helped bridge their ideological differences, popularizing Swaraj. It made the demand for self government a mass demand, moving it from the halls of the Congress to the streets and towns of India. The limitation and decline. The movement began to decline after 1918. The Montagu Chelmsford reforms of 1919 were a disappointment, falling far short of responsible government. The rise of Gandhi after 1919 with his more radical strategy of non-cooperation offered a new and more compelling path to Swaraj. The Home Rule leagues eventually merged with the Congress. The historical role have been fulfilled. Source integration. The connection between the Home Rule movement and the Montagu Declaration is analyzed in P.D. Reeves' essay in Congress and the Raj. Facets of Indian struggle 1917 to 1947. Its role as a precursor to Gandhian mass politics is a theme in Judith M. Brown's Gandhi's Rise to Power, Indian Politics 1915 to 1922. Conclusion. The Pivotal Bridge. In conclusion, the Home Rule movement was not a failed agitation but a critically successful one. It was the most effective all India movement before the arrival of Gandhi. It masterfully exploited the contingencies of World War I to extract a historical concession from the British Empire. Politically, it acted as the essential bridge between the era of the elite divided politics and the era of unified mass nationalism by educating a generation, popularizing a clear political goal and demonstrating the power of sustained constitutional agitation. It prepared the Indian populace for the final and more decisive struggles that would be led by Mahatma Gandhi. Its legacy is not in its own longevity, but the political awakening is catalyzed, making the demand for Swaraj an irreversible and popular national imperative. That's it for the topic.